Over 30 years ago, Jim Lee came out with a set of lithographs called Bad Night for the Ninjas. I bought this set back when it first came out in 1989, and I've had it hung in my house ever since. And ever since I got into statue collecting, I've always wanted a statue of this set. But now, thanks to 3D printing, I get my wish. And today, we're going to print part 1 of this lithograph set. This is the Punisher, Bad Night for Ninjas. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So today's video, I have an exclusive treat for you guys. I commissioned this piece right here as part 1 of the Jim Lee lithograph from 1989 entitled Bad Night for the Ninjas. So I commissioned this piece from a guy named Facundo Palet. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but he's with FP Artworks. And he created this from the set of lithographs that Jim Lee did back in 1989. And then today we're doing the first part of it, which is the Punisher here. We're gonna get into it here in just a little bit. He is also doing the Wolverine set as we speak right now. He should be finishing that up, and we'll do a separate video for that one. But first, before we get started, make sure to smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, that way you don't miss out on any future videos. Now let's talk a little bit about a backstory on this piece right here. So over 30 years ago, back in 1989, I purchased this set of lithographs from my local comic book store. And I've had them framed up in my house pretty much ever since. I mean, almost 35 years. So when I started getting into statue collecting, I always thought it would be the coolest thing ever to have this actually done in a statue, but nobody ever did it. Now, thanks to 3D printing, I got my wish here. And not only that, I decided to go ahead and give it to my Patreon members. So if you're part of my Patreon, you are going to get this file right here absolutely free for supporting the channel through Patreon all of these months. Did I mention you're going to get Wolverine too? So I'm also doing a little bit different format starting with this video here. I'm going to go through everything that we do pretty much on the painting and the building process. So instead of showing how I'm just going through and painting it with a bunch of time lapses, I'm going to zero in on a couple of things that I use, a couple of techniques that I use that maybe you can pick up on this. And I'm also going to let you in on the settings and the machine and the resin and everything else that I use to help create this piece right here. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. So here I have the model that's all printed and prepped and primed. Basically, this is the Punisher part right here. This model is in quarter scale, and most of it I printed with the Uniformation GK2. I did the review on that printer by printing this model. So if you want to go check that review out to see how good that printer actually does, then check out up in the upper corner and you can go to that video. Now the ninjas here are also, this is a big diorama because this is quarter scale on all of these, and the ninjas here I already printed and I painted the base coat red. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and start detailing out the ninjas here. I'm going to start adding a black wash. I'm going to start painting the soles of the shoes and different parts of this black. So it is going to have some black in it, and I'm going to do some shading and stuff as well. So it will kind of accent both colors, I guess. But I'm going to toy with it and see what it looks like when I'm done. I'll determine whether it looks good enough or not. And then I will start on Punisher after the ninjas. So on the first ninja here, this is the one that's laying on the ground. What I'm going to do here is, first things first, I'm going to go ahead and paint the face here, which, you know, is just basic skin tone. It's not going to be anything elaborate, but we're going to make it look good because he's pretty much face down. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use black on the soles of the boots, and then I'm going to do some deep shading with black onto the suit. I'm going to paint the arrows black, and then I'm going to do some accents here on the sheaths of the swords, of the katanas, and yeah, and then of course this is going to be black as well. So let's go ahead and get started on this one. So once I got all of the black painted on everything, this is what the ninjas look like. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start some deep shading into the cracks and crevices and on the folds of the suit. And then I'm going to do a wash on the gauntlets or the gloves and on the leggings as well. So let's get to it. So for the shading, I'm just going to be using this basic Vallejo black right here. So here I have both of the models deep shaded. I normally don't like deep shading like this, but according to the lithograph, this is pretty much the way it is on there. I think it turned out okay. The next thing I'm going to do is, because right now this to me looks very, very just flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this Wicked color here. This is a Wicked Orange from Createx. And I'm actually going to go and airbrush some of the highlights on the top. I already did the cowl right here. And bring that red out a little bit more. I'm going to do this on some of the highlight points of the sculpt here. And bring out some of those reds and make it pop a little bit better. That way it's a little bit more definitive than kind of being flat like it is. All right, so as you can see, the highlights are on there. So when you apply like an orange over a red, you can do that because this is red is a deep, rich color, and this isn't going to make it necessarily turn orange or anything unless you put heavy coats to it or apply it real thick or whatever. And I did on a couple of points here because I wanted to stand out a little bit more, like the tip of the cowl up on the arms and on the fingers. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to apply a black wash on the wraps on the legs and on the arms here on both models. So then the next thing what I'll do is I'll get like a little paper towel here and I'll moisten it up a little bit with a little bit of water, not too damp or anything. And then what I'll do is on top of that wash, I'll just take and rub that over there, take some of that paint off the highlights, as you can see, or you can do it old school and you can dry brush it, but I actually do both. So I'm actually taking a little bit of that off and gives it a little bit better weather feel to me. So that's just my opinion, and it's just something that I like to do. Now you can just, like I said, you can just dry brush it, lighter color over the top of it. I do both because that allows the color to sink in a little bit further into the cracks and crevices and give you a little bit of separation on that highlight. But this just adds a little bit more depth into it. But don't do this unless you've sealed your model. That's why I seal my model. Like when I do a full red like this or a big giant coat on here where I'm going to have to be handling the model, I always seal it first. Because if you try this and see how it's taking the black off of there, the wash, if you try this without your model sealed, you can run into problems where it actually will take the red, the paint itself off, and you don't want to do that. That'll just open up a whole can of worms and you'll be pissed at me for telling you to do this. So now it's going on to little things like the details. Like I will take a little bit of leather brown and I'll dry brush some of the areas here, like on the gauntlets, some of the leather parts on the boots, and even on the nunchucks here. And then, you know, just a matter of just doing all your detail work. I'll paint this chain here more of a chrome type color, and then putting everything together, detail on the face, and then I'll go and also work on putting a little dry brushing here on the strap here with the leather, and then just kind of accenting the arrows a little bit here in the back, and yeah, and then the ninjas will be done. Okay, so now we got the ninjas finished. What I did here on the Punisher was I primered it a gray primer, and then I used a flat blue from Vallejo for this top coat here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to go back in with a couple of lighter blues, like this Go Light blue, and this is a blue gray here. I'm trying to hold the model and do this at the same time. And I'm going to do some highlights on the body itself. I'm going to hit the tops of the peaks of the legs, the muscles, and everything else on here. And then what I'm going to go do is I'm actually going to go behind it, and I'm going to do some deep shading with a black. What I want to do is I want to keep it close to the proximity of the lithograph, comic base, but at the same time hit those highlights and do the deep shading in there, and just hit my stand there. And I just want to bring all this out, but I want to keep it as close to what Jim Lee did in the lithograph, and I think this is probably going to be the best bet. Then what I'll do is I'll go back in with an off-white to paint the skull, the gloves, and I'll do some highlights and deep shading on, or not deep shading, but some shading with some grays and some lighter whites, and maybe a couple of little accents on some of these boots and everything like that. So that's the next plan, and I'm going to get to it. Okay, so we're going to start off with this gray blue here. All right, so here we are with the highlights done. I'm gonna get this up a little closer, you can see it. So if you see, they'll use like 3 different blues to blend in there and make this thing really stick out like a sore thumb. But the highlights, the top shading, the top highlights and everything are all there. Hold on, let me get this thing turned around. And you can see the back, you know, the musculature, the anatomy and everything. Everything is very accented. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use black to go in and take a lot of this out. I'm going to go in to the folds of the skin and the suit and just really do some deep shading on this. Again, I don't like doing deep shading very often, but in this model here, it's pretty necessary. Okay, so this is the black that's added onto here. Yeah, it really makes a difference. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take this Glow Light Blue again, and I'm going to go back in and touch up on some areas and make this thing really stand out, hit some of the peaks and highlights. But I did get some nice transitions in here from a light blue to a mid blue to a dark blue and then to a black. But that's the goal. That's what I wanted to do to kind of keep it comic savvy. But as you can see, and this is, I haven't even done the white for the gloves, the skull, and the boots yet, so that's going to really accent things and make this really stand out. Okay, so now I'm going to use this off-white here to paint the skull here, and I kind of pre-painted the gloves and the boots a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish those up. I'm going to hand paint these. I'm not going to mask anything off. You watch my videos, you guys know how I feel about masking. I don't do it. Now that I have the skull and the boots all painted white, as you can see here, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a gray wash on the pouches and in the gloves, a little bit in the boots here. I'm going to use this gray right here from Vallejo. And then the next thing I'm going to do a little bit of airbrushing here in the folds of the suit with, again, a little bit of just a common light gray and give it a little bit of depth here. Now also keep in mind that I did seal the model before I'm doing this, so it is very possible that it might take a couple of coats for this this wash to bite onto the clear coat, but I haven't really had much trouble with, you know, this stuff actually taking on here, depending on the type of clear coat that you do use. Like I said, you might need to take a couple of coats in order for it to get into there. So all the washes dry on the boots and on the gloves, and I went ahead and painted the strap, and I did the blast right here, the rifle blast, and I actually did a little OSL on that, not too shabby. So the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to do some gray shading in the skull right here. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is work on the head. I do have the skin tone base down on it. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use this rose colored undertone here in order to go in and do some of the shading. Alright, so now we got our undertones on the skin tone. Next thing we got to do, old Punisher, old Frank, has to have a 5 o'clock shadow. And I went ahead and airbrushed a little bit of the hair on there, so I'll tighten it up with a hand brush and put the eyes in and teeth, and Punisher will be done. Okay, so now we're moving on to the base here. I've already painted the wood crates a wood color. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use a brown wash on these guys right here, like so. And we're going to do a little bit of highlighting here with a lighter wood color, almost like a beige color. And of course, we'll do the bullet casings here as well. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the trash can like a gunmetal gray, do a black wash over it, and then we're going to paint this because this is supposed to be basically a street scene, but I wanted a little bit like cracks and texture into this so it didn't look so plain. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use like a pavement color for this. I'm thinking I might leave it gray. And then we're going to do some highlights and deep shading on this. And inside of the base here is the trash can, or the trash can here. We'll paint all this stuff up and we will be done with this part. The only other thing that we have left is the light right here. I was going to run some LEDs in this, but I thought to myself that, oh man, well, if it's here and it's torn down, how could it be lit? So all I'm going to do here is I did this with a neon ink with clear Sunlu resin, and that's how I got this this neon red right here. So we're going to paint this up, and yeah, so it's going to look pretty cool. Okay, so now that I've got the border around the sign done, I'm going to use this transparent yellow here from Vallejo, and I'm going to paint the inside of all of the neon sign here. I've kind of dirtied it up a little bit, but I'm going to paint all of this right in here, and we're going to leave all this out like it is right here, and we're going to clear coat all that. So once I get done with the yellow, then I'm going to take a transparent red and do the inside lettering here. Okay, so we got all of that on there. It's starting to kind of look like a really frilly neon sign of some sort. I'm still not sure whether I like this or not, but we're going to go with it for now. The only thing I got to do is do some touch-ups on it, add the copper tips to it, put a little bit of a wash on it, do a little bit of weathering, and then this part of the base is done. Okay, on the base, the next thing we're going to do is put a big black wash over everything except for the wood crate. So while we're waiting on the wash to dry, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to texture and do some dry brushing on the wood crates. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a fan brush like this, and I'm going to go in between like this oiled earth wash right here and also this like Iraqi sand. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically apply this on my brush, just like so. Don't wipe too much of it off, and I'm going to go through with light strokes like so to get a good texture on the wood grain. Now you want to go with the grain, but basically you're just kind of adding, the grain to the wood, and just, going between the wash and going in between this light colored paint here. Don't be afraid to go too bold or anything, and you're just basically adding, the grain to the wood. All right, so with the base, the only thing that is left to do is to paint the trash bags, and there's a couple of cans in here to paint. I'm going to do that real quick, and then I'm going to dry brush the whole entire base here, and then paint the bullets, and then yeah, just glue everything together, and we're going to be done with the base. Next we're going to take some pan pastel, and we're going to go ahead and weather this up a little bit more, like right here in the sides and in the cracks. So everything was printed on the Uniformation GK2. Absolutely great printer. If you missed my review on it, check it out. It's up in the corner right now. Go and take a look at that video and see how good it really is. This is printed in quarter scale. Like I said, the file is from FP Artworks. And this is a one-of-a-kind commission for me that I commissioned out from them. Let's see, the settings on this, I used a 0.05 layer height, and I used a 1.8 millimeter thickness on the walls. It's a hollowed print, and I used 5% grid infill for the inner support, and it's all printed in Sunlu resin. I use mainly the standard gray. And then for the base here, I used the ABS right here. So this is the ABS white. And yeah, so I used all of that. So also on the neon sign here, I did use Sunlu clear resin. And what I did was, to get this effect, I used a neon red alcohol ink and mixed it with the clear resin. And this piece right here and the actual base, it's in 3 sections, was printed on the Lynette deck because the GK2 was just a little too small for that. But everything else, as you can see, is all printed on the Uniformation GK2. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope you got something out of it. And I also want to take this time to thank my Patreon members, and I have a couple of new members. Let's see who it is. Let's all say hello to Batman Rod and Yasser. Thank you guys so much for becoming the newest member of the Patreon. And if you'd like to become a member of the Patreon as well, the link is below in the description. Don't forget, my current Patreon members are going to get this file right here very, very soon. And they're also going to get the Wolverine file for supporting the channel all these months. So this isn't something that I'm going to do every single month. But when I can give back, I absolutely am going to do that. We do discuss what we're going to be doing next over on our private Discord, where you can get on there and talk all things printing and painting. And if the Patreon is not for you, then you can definitely support the channel by sharing the videos or just simply watching the videos. I'll take either. All right, and until the next video, everyone, get out and create something. Print, prep, paint, repeat. We'll see you. If you still need some convincing to get into 3D printing, hello.